Rhiannon, you're in the lucky position as a Green Senator of not having to worry too much about formulating a budget, but obviously you've been keeping an eye on what Scott Morrison's been up to over the last few weeks. What's your take on what's happening?
Well, what you would expect, sadly, from a coalition government, what they're doing will drive further inequality in Australia. When you look at housing, when you look at education, like they're not putting the public first. What they do, and the Liberal Nationals, let's remember, their constituency is corporate Australia. They're making it easy for corporate Australia to profit out of people's hardship, and that's deeply wrong.
One of the emerging narratives is that young people are going to be paying well into the future for some of the problems that this budget can't fix. You know, housing affordability, a generation that won't be able to afford a house, a generation who are going to end up in debt because of their education, a generation facing falling wages and living standards because of cuts to penalty rates and minimum wages and so on. Is this budget the revenge of the baby boomers?
Young people will be screwed over by this budget. They've already been screwed over by this government. But I wouldn't say that the budget couldn't fix things, because a fair government that was committed to governing for all people in this country would be ensuring that corporations pay proper taxes, that they address inequality, that you look at ensuring that there's sufficient funds there for homeless people, that you address housing affordability so we reduce the number of people who are forced to live on the streets. And then when it comes to education, health, transport, those public services should be properly funded. And that's absolutely possible in a rich country like Australia, having proper corporate taxes, not decreasing them like they just have been from 30 to 25%, and ensuring those companies actually pay tax. How extraordinary that we find out that there's 100 companies in the past few years who pay no tax to the Australian Tax Office. That's robbing the public of money that's needed for public services.
Then who is this budget going to be for? Because Malcolm Turnbull seems that he can't win the next election. I mean, we're a long way away from that, but, you know, I mean, the writing on the wall for him is not looking very positive, is it? The opinion polls, he hasn't been in front for a long time. So who is going to benefit from this budget? What is Turnbull and the coalition up to? Who are they trying to please with this?
Well, the Liberal and Nationals, let's remember who their constituency is. When it comes to the Nationals, it's the agri-businesses. When it comes to the Liberals, it's particularly developers, the investors, the property speculators. So many of their policies are geared to assisting those people. And let's look at who did Mr Turnbull meet when he went to the United States. He's there meeting with leading business people. He's not out there meeting with workers, hearing what the problems are, speaking to the homeless people who are living in New York. Like these parties, the Liberals and Nationals, are there to service corporate Australia, and that's who will benefit from the budget tonight.
It looks like we've seen that, haven't we, quite clearly with the decision to scrap licence fees, $100 million savings to the television industry, announcement made an hour after the Prime Minister had dinner with Rupert Murdoch in New York. Surely that's only a coincidence.
Oh, it's not a coincidence. So often Mr Murdoch's there in the background. There's all of a sudden that there's a deal around media ownership. And what we've seen under this government and successive coalition governments, and too often Labor's been weak on this area, is they don't address the issue of media concentration, because still in Australia, there's only a few families who control the media outlets. And even with the internet, that's like the intention of those big media families is to try and control how that all works. But that's not assisting the free flow of information. It's not how a democratic society should work. Again, Mr Turnbull, he hasn't changed things for the better since he's been in office. He's looking after his setup, his parties and his class.
What do you think of the idea that's been floated in response to what's happening at Fairfax, that government should maybe be subsidising good, strong public interest journalism? Do you have any support for that view?
I think there's a very good case for public ownership of print media. We have it with the Australian Broadcasting Commission. We see the British Broadcasting Commission. Many countries around the world have government interests in the media outlets that are important for that country. It doesn't mean that they should control them or dictate in any way, but the funding should be there. And that's where you have independence and you have a media that can assist to inform the public, not just dictate rubbish as we get from the likes of News Limited and sadly more and more from the Fairfax media.
Well, the Fairfax strike has drawn attention to the problems inside that company, but unfortunately after a week it doesn't seem like anything's been fixed. I mean, there's still going to be 120 odd journos lose their jobs, and Fairfax doesn't look like any closer to solving its financial problems.
It certainly doesn't look real good for how it's playing out with Fairfax, and they seem to have got captured by following the bottom line rather than good journalism. So that doesn't give a lot of hope. But I certainly congratulate the journalists who have gone on strike. They took an unprotected 7-day strike. That's fantastic under an Australian Industrial Relations Commission when you know you can get hit with heavy fines. So they're really brave and take an important stand for all of us, because the right to strike is fundamental. It's a policy of the Greens, and it's something that we should return to those days when workers had the ability to go on strike.
The comments I've seen on Twitter from people now is, let's hope that the Fairfax journalists learn something about solidarity and don't be so anti-union in their own reporting.
Yeah. Anyway, I better get back inside.
Thank you very much, Lee. Nice to talk to you.
See you.